It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Welcome back to another episode of Slashers in Sync. Thank you for tuning in. We are going to be looking at MaXXXine today.
Yeah.
So, very interesting film. If you're not following us on TikTok, go do that at Slash in Sync. Link will be down below in the description. We talked about our first impressions, and I think you and I both agreed that, and you're going to save your point for later, but we both agreed that this movie was different than what we expected.
Definitely.
It was still good though. But, I mean, off of first viewing, I would probably not put it on the level of Pearl and X, but...
I would put it higher than X, but that's also because of the fact that I didn't necessarily like certain scenes in X.
That movie is very highly praised. I think what threw us off was the sex stuff.
That's the reason why. And I've only seen it once. I get the whole story about the fact that, like, you have a whole bunch of different teens and young adults getting together to go to a barn to film, like, a porno video, if you will.
Yeah, it's in the 70s where porn was, like, climbing up.
And
so,
I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I truly do. The only thing is, like, it was a lot of sex. And it wasn't, like, the youngsters just having sex either. It was the older couple having a lot of sex, too. And I was just kind of thrown off by it. The group that I went to go watch the movie, too, wasn't necessarily the best to watch it with either. So I think that's another reason why I was so off-putted as well.
Like, is this a secondhand embarrassment? Is that what it's called? Or is it just embarrassment?
I wasn't embarrassed at all. I was just kind of like, I mean, it's a horror film and horror film has a lot of sex. But if you had secondhand embarrassment or just embarrassment in general, then...
It was because of the way I hyped the movie up to them. And then, like, then it's like a porno / horror film, you know, and then like the
you and I didn't know any better.
Grandpa sex, you know. So
we didn't know any better. I mean, and it's not our fault that they took our word as like godsend. So,
by the way, old grandma and grandpa sex. I know they weren't really grandparents. It's just that's the little joke I make. But Pearl, yeah, and her husband. But yeah, I mean, MaXXXine was done by Ty West. This is the X Trilogy. However, there is talk about him possibly doing a fourth film, which we'll get into that a little later. But
I wouldn't mind that.
So Ty West brought us MaXXXine, and I believe X was set in the 70s, as we said. Pearl was like in the 30s or 40s or something like that.
I would say 40s.
And now MaXXXine is in the 80s.
Yeah.
And this film was all over the 80s, man. Like, it felt like an 80s film. The music was there.
Very
and
immersive.
it wasn't your typical, like, Journey or Metallica music. Like, they really played...
all kinds of music.
All kinds, and it was
They even, like, took certain portions of Hollywood Boulevard and made it very, like, 80s-esque. Both the lightings, the neons, like, the crosswalks, the way people dress, the cars. Like, it didn't feel like somebody who's dressed up in the 80s being thrown into modern-day Hollywood Boulevard.
Not like the few Stranger Things seasons there are. Because the first Stranger Things season, and the fourth Stranger Things season actually does capture the 80s pretty well. It's just you could tell where they're forcing it.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like you said, they're not pandering to the 80s. We're in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, and you could feel that in the atmosphere. And
even the radio stations, like the way that people talked, the music that was playing, like the protests, the types of protests, like everything just kind of aligned with the 80s in my eyes. The Night Stalker is always something that comes into play whenever it comes into Hollywood and like the 80s. It goes hand in hand.
Like American Horror Story 84?
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of know exactly where in the 80s MaXXXine took place. But overall, I liked it. Like, as a film, right now I'm judging it as a standalone film. Now, as part of an ending to a trilogy, I also feel like it's a really good ending.
Yeah, it's a pretty good conclusion for what they told us in X and how MaXXXine's character carries over. But she mentioned Night Stalker, and that's what I wanted to say before we jump into spoiler territory, is if you're thinking this movie's going to be about the Night Stalker, it's not. They mention him. You even see when, I guess, he got jumped by the civilians and all of that happened. They show it on the news. They don't show it, but I'm about to finish my sentence.
Sorry.
But no, you're good. They show it on the news, and that's pretty much it. You're not gonna see the Night Stalker going around stalking people and slicing people up. Like,
no, they had some sketches on the news as well. They had like brief updates coming from like either the TVs in the TV store or like the radio stations that people were listening to. But you were getting just mild updates here and there, nothing like too crazy, nothing too obsessive.
So now we're gonna jump into spoiler territory. But I guess before we do that, I'll actually name off the cast because they had a pretty star-studded cast.
They did.
So Mia Goth was returning, obviously, as MaXXXine.
Mm-hmm.
They had Tabby Martin playing Hazy. They had Elizabeth Bender playing, Elizabeth Debicki playing Elizabeth Bender. They had Lily Collins here actually playing Molly Bennett.
Yep.
Kevin Bacon was in this film. Michelle McGonagall was in this film. Giancarlo Esposito was in this film. So was Bobby Cannavale was in this film. They had a whole bunch of actors as well as... so I always think of, oh man, I got peanut butter on my penis from Halloween 2018. And you had Toby Huss there playing, I think, was like a just a ambulance or like paramedic, right? But yeah, tons of actors in here, and you could really feel that this movie was on a higher level. A lot of love and a lot of time was placed into it. A lot of time was placed into not just making it, but also selecting the people who could encompass the characters as well. Very different than Pearl, whereas Mia Goth was actually pretty much covering that movie, or it's carrying that movie, if you will. Not to say the other, backpacking it. Let's be real. Not to like diss the other actors and actresses in that film. It's just she definitely was carrying that movie. Like, she stood out. You went there for her performance, essentially. Yeah, she stood out. Like, I have not had the opportunity to sit back and watch Pearl again, other than the time that we watched it in theaters. But it's a very memorable experience for different reasons than X. I think even in X, like, it wasn't just because of us hyping up the film and not just with the group that we went with, but even the crowd within the theater were like making comments as we were leaving. Which I feel like the area and the city that we were watching the film wasn't necessarily the best area or city to watch that film. Remember that old couple was like, that was one heck of a film. And I was like, it was, right? And he's like, yeah. I think that was the only like chill group that was within the theater, because I think I even saw, and I never mentioned this to you, this like one couple get up and leave halfway through. Yeah. Which was pretty interesting. X? Yeah. That was, I remember the theater we were at. We weren't at the usual spot that we go to. No, that's why I said like just the people in like the area that, or the people that live within that area aren't necessarily like younger, if you will. So they weren't open to the new aspects of horror, I guess. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe that couple that liked it was probably like an old horror fan. Yeah, probably. Grew up watching like Michael and shit in the 70s. But regardless of all that, so MaXXXine starts off with Maxine Minx back in the action, back in the frame, if you will. Well, Maxine, but this time she has a new last name. New last name. She wants to become an actress. Yes. Not just a porn star. But it seems like she's gotten pretty big off of pornography, right? Like that. Like, very much so, like her name's very much known. People even know her in the industry, but don't necessarily respect her because she's a porn star. So. Yeah, I think the opening scene is similar to the trailers where Maxine walks in and she's in her like all blue jean outfit with the walk that she has and so on and so forth. She comes in, she sits down, and when the scene started, and I find this kind of ironic, you and I and our friend group went and saw like the Warner Brothers Studios tour, right? So and I remember our tour guide always saying that the arches, or I guess the curved roofs of the studios, is what makes it significant to it being Warner Brothers. Yeah. And I instantly figured out where we were, because scene's black, and then you see the sliding doors slide back, and then Maxine's walking through, but right before she walks through, you see like those arched roofs. Yeah. She comes in, she sits down with like 3 other people behind the tables, very stereotypical standard like casting setup, if you will. And that's when we really start to understand what has happened from X till now, where she has really blown up within the porno industry. She's now in Los Angeles. She's in Los Angeles. She's no longer in Texas. Like, she has a new last name. And she's been trying for a while now to get a real role.
And I guess with the acting that she does and the way that she carries herself, it strikes a chord with just one person of the three that are sitting there, which we come to find out later on in the film who that is.
Yeah.
But I feel like watching her, I guess, audition for the position that she wants to be in or the role that she wants to have sold me, because you saw Mia Goth really encompass and capture Maxine's trauma, because you've seen Pearl's trauma, and even Pearl at the very end of the scene, you see her like shaking and smiling and tears running down her face, right?
Yeah.
So you know the kind of trauma that Pearl's been through. We've seen the traumatic events that have happened to Maxine, but we haven't seen Maxine like sit down and relish in the trauma that she was in and that she was exposed to. And this is the first time I feel like we got to see it by just like kind of throwing herself into this role. Right before she leaves too, which I find really ironic, and I guess kind of throws back to what you said earlier, they don't really respect her too much. The older lady of the three casting members, if you will, asked Maxine to take off her top so this way they could see her breasts.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, all right, what's the fucking point in this? Like, I get it, horror films, there's a lot of sex in it, but do you really need to see her tits?
Like right now.
Yeah. Anyway, when she walks out, she has the kind of confidence that she normally has, very similar to Pearl whenever Pearl walked out of that casting center. But she's carrying herself the way that Maxine would, which I really appreciate Mia Goth for doing this, because she really encompasses each role that she has in a very specific way.
Which just shows how good she is, the range she has.
Exactly. Because I mean, I think Pearl even says like, oh, there's no, like, she says it politely. She's like, I don't think there's any reason for you guys to be here. While Mink's walking out, she just goes, you guys can just pack up and go home because I fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
No, yeah. And I think that sold like Maxine as a character for me.
Yeah.
Was in that moment there. And the movie just picks up from there, because then we start getting seen to the rest of the cast and seeing, I guess, Giancarlo not play a Gus / meth dealing gangster.
Or just like a bad guy in general. And I don't mean like an antagonist. I feel like that's the best way to word it.
He's just a little Hollywood agent, you know. He's got a pass, we don't know it, but Hollywood agent, you know.
Yeah,
so.
essentially.
But it was cool to see him play a role in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Slightly goofy, which I thought was refreshing.
Yeah. Especially people have been bringing up that they're kind of like tired of him being typecasted. However, I mean, this dude went from being like supposedly on the brink of like suicide and being broke. So like Breaking Bad really brought him back. And if he wants to play a villain, let him play a villain, man.
Yeah.
You know. So, but it is cool that he got to play a character like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But I think at that point, that's when we start meeting her friends, right? Like she's going, she's to the video store, and then she goes to that place.
It's a mix of everything, because like the film almost seems to overstimulate you in some way or forms as a viewer, because like after that, like you said, we come to find out who her friends are, but at the same time, we're learning who her friends are while she's going through her day-to-day life of work. It's
almost, and it's like backed by a very 80s style montage too,
yeah, you have like the panels coming in, like she's in her car, she finally gets to her house, she's running late though, and then I think she gets a call from one of her agents where we see finally debut of the guy who plays Gus. I just call him Gus because it is what it is. At least
one of her favorite TV or your favorite TV villain, right?
Yeah, favorite TV villain for sure. Like I want to say top 5, for sure. But once like we see her out getting off the phone, she says she's running late for one of her gigs. Before she leaves though, she makes a stop at the video store that conveniently is literally right next to her apartment complex.
And we see her best friend. Like this is, I had never even seen her. I didn't see Maxine react this way to anyone in X.
No,
like she's very close to this guy. Like they've connected on some form of level. I think he makes a joke. It's because I'm the only guy who doesn't want to fuck you, right?
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah. So. Now whether or not he really does or doesn't, we don't know. But he overtly and very like plainly makes it obvious that no, they're just friends.
Yeah. And video store, man. Remember those?
Yeah. Funny enough, they had different sections. It was very obvious that this video store was more of an adult video store, meaning like they had horror, but it wasn't like the classic horror. It was very much like unhinged horror. Mind you, they were talking about like Jamie Lee Curtis and things along those lines. And then you finally come to realize what the name of the new movie's coming to be, which is The Puritan 2. Because Maxine tells her best friend, like, hey, watch out, like, next time you're stocking up the video store, it's going to be my face that's on this, like, VHS case,
Yeah.
not hers.
Which, by the way, The Puritan's a badass name for a horror movie.
Definitely.
I'm not gonna hold you.
I honestly thought it was real until I realized, nope, they just made it up for this film.
I think at that point, that's when we move over to her second gig, right? And that's where she's
getting ready to film a porno.
Like, what are those things called? Like, what, like the... Oh, yeah, we do see her go to the porno scene, too. Yeah. But I was also talking about the mirror thing.
Like, the night shows?
Yeah, okay, that's what they're called, night shows. I've always seen them. I never knew what they're called, though. So
I call them night shows. I don't know what their official name is. Essentially, she is sitting back in a room. It's a one-way mirror, where the person on the other side of the mirror can see what's going on through the glass. But for her, it's just like a mirror.
But I mean, you did mention the porno, though, because that's where we get introduced to one of her friends, another blonde-haired porn star. Maybe a little competition there.
Ever so slightly. You can tell Maxine's not worried, but the other girl seems to kind of like throw few jabs here.
She views herself at the same level as Maxine.
Yeah.
Even though Maxine isn't worried. And then she mentions she's going to go to a party on the hills.
Yeah, it's a party on the hills right underneath the Hollywood sign. It's for a big shot out-of-town producer. Funny enough, whenever the girl finally walks off, you see Maxine like pick up the lid of a little ceramic goose. And I still can't get over this, but I also need to realize that Coke was very prevalent and there was an excess of it everywhere.
A lot of Coke.
And Maxine just gets her little Coke spoon, spoons it up, and just...
A lot of fucking Coke in there, bro.
Yeah. I was just like, that goose right now is worth at least like $10,000 to $15,000. Let alone what it was worth then. So it literally looked like powdered sugar or just baking soda in there.
There was so much Coke that even if you bought like the big salt thing and filled it in there, it'd only be halfway.
I would think so, yeah. And it was just in this fucking goose. So I don't know if it's all the porn stars that have access to this or it's just Maxine's little storage. But either way, like, I'm going to assume it's all the porn stars, not just hers.
She then makes her way to the night show that I brought up. I went a little too ahead there, but she makes her way to the night show. She gets a customer. Somebody walks in and
they're wearing all black.
Black gloves. And I shit you not. This scene, not particularly, but the next scene when he gets into the car that the driver is driving him. But we'll get into that more in a second. I just want to make this point. In the night show, he grabs like the railing or the
wooden railing,
the frame, and he's gripping it, right? He also does that later when he's in the backseat of a car and he's gripping the seat of the car.
But before he does that, you need to realize and remember, while Maxine's like moving around the way that she does, and she's dressed up like a cute little like 20s dapper girl, if you will. This guy's also clenching and unclenching his fist the entire time.
Yes.
And then that's when he moves to the frame.
Yeah. And the reason why I brought that up was not so much about this movie. It's just more so about the point I was going to make. And that is the fact that it's very reminiscent of Michael Myers in Halloween 5.
Yeah.
In Halloween 5, there's a couple of scenes where Michael has his hand on the wheel and he's just gripping. He's wearing like the black gloves. And also the man in black who follows Michael and I think Jamie, right? That's the name of the little girl. Yeah. Follows them around throughout the movie. And he also has a scene where he's squinching. Like it just, I don't know if Ty West got that from that, but it was almost like shot for shot the exact same thing. Like it was.
I think so. It was very
stereotypical,
stereotypical, very like slashers-esque horror film where like you see this masked person wearing all black or all white, who knows, with like gloves, and like it's very obvious that they're frustrated. Now, what kind of frustration? Up to you to decide.
By the way, now that we know who that person is, that's fucking disgusting. He was watching that shit.
Oh no, 100%. I'm not even gonna think about it. Anyway.
But, so after that whole scene plays out, we then jump away from after he breaks the railing where Maxine's leaving. She has another friend, this time brunette. They actually seem like friends.
Yeah.
So that they're chatting, talking. Of course, she mentions party on the hills again.
With the same big shot producer. But I don't think she says like she wants to go for the producer. She's going there just for the party and to meet up with like a whole bunch of rich guys. That's it.
And you could tell it was a genuine friendship because she also compliments and congratulates Maxine on getting that role.
Maxine still hadn't gotten the news then. No, she compliments her because she finds out that she's actually going out there trying to cast herself for real roles. She's like, I give you props, because usually people who get thrown into this life, it's very difficult for them to get out of it, which is like the sex entertainment life. At least then. I think that's whenever we finally see the guy with the gloves sitting in the car and he's like gripping the seat. and the driver's talking to him with a heavy drawl, heavy accent. He turns around, looks at the masked man, if you will, and lo and behold, it's Kevin Bacon. With little two gold teeth, two gold fangs right here, guys. Just like right there.
Which is kind of funny because I found out recently that he has pet pigs and his name's Bacon.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of hilarious.
I don't know if his little pet pigs know that his last name is Bacon, but neither here nor there.
I hear pigs make actually pretty good pets. It's just I'm a little freaked out about them, about this theory I heard about the whole lost souls of the damn thing. So it's kind of hard for me to ever have a pig as a pet, but
I've at one point wanted a piglet as a pet, but I then realized that the piglets don't stay piglets for a while. They become pigs. And I'm not too sure, because I've heard that like pig hooves hurt, and I'm not too sure if I'm ready for like a pig to charge 25 to 30 miles an hour towards me and then jump onto me with their like stone-like hooves.
Anyways, so
sorry, going back to Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, so we see him and he's like talking to this guy about like, this is the last thing I'll do for you or whatever. He's making it seem very like,
not just that, but also like, hey, I found her, like, and she did a real good job of hiding herself, like kind of like boasting in the fact that he even found Maxine to begin with. And I think the gloved guy just kind of like does some sort of hand motion, and then Kevin Bacon just kind of calms the fuck down and they drive off, or they follow her, one of the two. I don't really remember.
By the way, I already said spoilers, and I'm not going to try and stick to the usual review format because we don't even have notes for this. Nope. I'm just go ahead and say it. The masked man is the dad.
Yeah.
So,
the masked man, the omnipresent antagonist throughout this film, turns out to be the father of Maxine.
Yeah.
Which, funny enough, bleeds into the ending of X. Because the ending of X, I believe there's something, either a TV turns on or like something takes over the screen where you see a pastor going around and like being like, oh, praise God, and so on and so forth. And then you see a framed photo of Maxine right there. But it seems like almost a memorial service, right?
Yeah.
So this kind of like we said earlier, ties everything all together. But taking away the fact that the masked person is the father, you think it potentially could be the Night Stalker. I think the day after you see the two friends that Maxine had, of course there's like a whole torture scene that's mixed into it where these people have like guns and like weapons held up towards these like two small tiny little girls who are like strapped up, gagged, have like blindfolds all over their eyes. And
they've been beaten up, it seems like, or something.
Or just like terrified because I'm assuming waterproof makeup wasn't too much of a thing because they had mascara just running down their faces.
Yeah.
Masked man comes forward. We still don't see his face. Of course, Maxine's dad, now that we've both revealed it. And the scene cuts. Next scene opens up and there's like a whole bunch of people in a cemetery. And funny enough, this is one thing that I caught in the film, but you never mentioned anything, and it was the brunette whenever they were crossing the street, when she was about to hop into a cab. She says the Black Dahlia wouldn't have gotten the fame that she had gotten if she wasn't killed, right?
Yeah.
So lo and behold, this brunette and Maxine's other friend, the blonde, are found in a cemetery, mutilated, not exactly like the Black Dahlia, but mutilated nonetheless, and they become infamous just like the Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
Almost like foreshadowing her own fate, if you will.
Yeah.
Maxine doesn't really come to learn about this until later. What's interesting is that there seems to be like the devil's mark branded on their body, which is a little different than how the Night Stalker has been playing this, because he carves it into the victims' bodies.
The cops right away knew that it wasn't the Night Stalker.
Copycat or something similar. In the cemetery scene, that's where we come to see the father within Halloween 2018 be the coroner, who's like rather funny and a little bit morbid and very like...
There's always that one, that one morbid like guy at the morgue or that guy at the...
Who just can't take his job seriously, and it's a coping mechanism. But
to deal with the fact that they're there with a bunch of bodies.
Still, it was pretty funny. Like, I saw, he was still very sarcastic and still very, like, kept his charm, and I could see where his personality bled from 2018 into this, but he also held his character well.
He's not as bad as that one dude from, was it Friday the 13th Part 4? what is he? Fucking something.
Yeah, fucking Christmas, Jiminy Christmas, Jesus, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, none of that.
Yeah, he wasn't as cartoony as that, but he was very like sarcastic and funny. Definitely like a nice change of pace of what we had just been through, because we also skipped over the scene where she's at her, I guess, apartment with the guy. Yeah,
with the video store owner or person who runs it, or the manager. She's in her apartment and she's laying down. They're cuddling on the couch. And funny enough, you see the credits for the Puritan rolling.
Oh, yeah.
And then you see the actress giving her, like, big old scream before the credits roll. And then there's a weird, like, knock on the door. MaXXXine is the only one who wakes up and goes to the door, answers it, and finds a video cassette in there.
Yeah. And she plays it, and it's basically the Texas Porn Star Massacre situation, which I thought that was a funny-ass name to give
it definitely was. It was the video that was left behind by her and her friends at the crime scene, the video that they were trying to shoot in the barn for their little porno.
Yeah. Again, very fucked up that the dad's watching all this shit, but I mean, neither here nor there. Anyways,
I'm not trying to think about it.
So we jump from that back over to what's happening with the murders, and again, as we said, the cops do not think this is the Night Stalker whatsoever.
No, but they know MaXXXine's involved.
They come confront her. Yeah. She doesn't want to talk to cops because, I mean, why not fuck them? So there you go. She doesn't want to talk to the cops, and again, the cops are played by Bobby. What's his name? Is it Valentine? I forget his name. And then Michelle Monaghan, and yeah, everybody loves Raymond, and then Michelle's been in a lot of movies and TV shows. We know her a lot from True Detective.
We do.
So it was cool to see her back in this realm, this atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. She had like knee-high rider boots the entire time throughout the movie, though. I was about to poke fun at it at some point in the theater, but the theater was rather packed, so I just kept that comment to myself.
So at this point in the story, I'm not going to try and cover every single part of it because Marv and I don't have notes, but it's a lot of like just going back and forth to the studio lots to either watch the director direct or meet the former actress of the Puritan. Yeah. There's a lot of dialogue with like
one thing
Kevin
that we
Bacon.
skipped, and I'm sorry to interrupt, is that before we stumble across the bodies, MaXXXine finally gets the word that she got the role for the Puritan. She's the main girl.
Yeah.
And that's whenever that's when it cuts to the friends being in the cemetery, and then it then cuts to the cops confronting her. And I think either day 1 or day 2, they actually drag her to the coroner's office.
No. I think
they show her the bodies.
No, I think she found the news earlier because she was already at the studios before she came back. Remember when the cops came to confront her? She was already having a fucking pissed off day, and that's why she didn't want to talk to them. Remember?
Oh yeah.
They came. It was like one thing right after the other. So because at that point, I think Kevin Bacon's character already fucked with her again.
Yeah, that was after the lunch, I think, or whatever that they were trying to do, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he made her go see her, right? He made her go see him.
Yeah,
like it was come here now or some bullshit.
It was some sort of weird letter, and then even Kevin Bacon left a note saying like, "Hey, you should go to 166 Starlight Street." Yeah. And she doesn't do it, and Kevin even like throws the whole ultimatum out there that if you don't go, you're gonna regret it.
Yeah. But going back to the whole like studio lots thing, there was a nice little tidbit of information. Ty West on the Psycho House. So in the part of the film where she's messing around in the lots, it's either at this point or a little bit later. So, but either way, I just want to kind of get it out of the way. She comes across the Psycho House, the original Bates Motel and the Psycho House. And that was cool. We both kind of like went, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers probably put them back up just for this film because we didn't see it during our tour. Either that or they had just wrapped up filming, one of the two.
Well, check this out. I thought I would just write that into the movie. I had no idea that I would eventually get permission for it. So here I am writing the Bates Motel in the script. And I say, why not? That would just be a cool little tidbit to have in there. Thankfully, the Hitchcock family said, yeah, no problem. And we were able to film in the actual Psycho House. That's pretty dope. That's really cool.
This is the first time I feel like a Hollywood film really showed how sets look like for films. On the inside. They really took the time to show you how it's like to move from set to set, to go from stage to stage, to see how like sets are staged literally. And then the chase scene within the Warner Brothers lot is she's literally running through a few different sets, and it looks like she's running through different decades. It's really funny. And obviously, Kevin lives up to his whole promise that, oh, you're going to regret it, because he tries to surprise her. This is all happening within the same 24 hours. Poor girl goes through so much shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when Kevin's chasing her, showing her his gun, and she's just booking it. And she's running through all the sets. Like, mind you, she doesn't break anything. In my mind, I'm thinking, I would just throw myself through the glass because this is all candy glass. This isn't a real glass.
Yeah.
But she doesn't do that. And then she ends up running up to the Psycho house, of all places.
Overall, that was probably one of my favorite chase scenes in a minute in a horror film. But Mia Goth is just really good in horror, man. Like,
she is. It's very much her calling, in my opinion.
Yeah. And overall, I think we also find out that one of the things that I guess is, a downside of her not going there, the whole show regretted, is later that night, that's when her best friend gets killed in the video store, I believe, right?
Yes. So after that, I believe Elizabeth, the director, really, and one thing that you and I also glossed over is that Elizabeth seems to really focus on Maxine, and she even recognizes the trauma that Maxine has gone through to really be able to portray the character that Elizabeth has in store for Puritan 2. And that's when we come to find out that Elizabeth really was the one vouching for Maxine, and she declined all the other actresses because she could tell Maxine had real trauma, had real baggage to bring to the story, to be able to tap into, to encompass the emotions that the Puritan 2 would need, right?
Right.
And I think at one point or another, Maxine, before the chase scene, she walks in on set to where the original girl in Puritan 1 is doing the opening scene, and she's biting into an apple, and the apple has the blood coming out of it, and so on and so forth. And we really see Elizabeth in her element. Maxine has a moment connecting with this girl right when the scene cuts, and she's like, hey, just listen to Elizabeth, do what she says, and she'll take care of her own. She'll really take care of you as long as you do whatever she wants you to do.
Yeah.
I did in Look Where I'm At Now, My Scream's infamous. She even mentions the whole party, or not a party, she's going up to a house on the hills where, again, a big shot producer from out of town invited her to go. And she's hoping for yet another role. And she thinks that her role in Puritan would be enough to get her into bigger Hollywood films. So this is when Kevin Bacon, she's walking away, Kevin Bacon shows up, and we have that chase scene that you and I just talked about. Kevin then gets caught by security, who, funny enough, earlier on in the film says, makes a weird side comment about Maxine, because most of the guys who seem to interact with Maxine are constantly saying, oh yeah, I know where you're from.
Yeah.
Which I didn't feel the most comfortable, but I also know that was really trying to show just how popular she was in pornos to begin with.
Yeah.
You could call it acting. She was really into it. She was really portraying what she could and the best that she could in her pornos, and hope to be becoming a true movie star. Because Maxine seems to always go 110% in everything.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I could tell through the films. After the chase scene and Maxine kind of comes to, Elizabeth picks up on the fact that she's not 100% there, and even tells her hey, just take the weekend off, and then we're going to start fresh. Whatever is haunting you, whatever you're trying to work through it. Monday's your last chance. Because when she walks onto set, she's running late due to the cops keeping her in the morgue for a longer period of time than what they should have. And this is where the movie again becomes a little bit overstimulating, but not in a bad way. More so in the sense you have the panels of her getting ready. She's airbrushing makeup on, she's taking a few hits of coke, and then you come to find her in an underground party in LA back in the 80s. Kevin stalking her once again and trying to really get to her. He kind of misses the mark a few times, and the scene then cuts to Maxine being outside with her agent also being outside, who she, along the mix of the way, literally spilled her own guts out to what happened in Texas, the reason why she feels like she's being hunted down.
And he fully supported her.
Yeah, and he was like, you know what? Yeah, I am your attorney. I will go ahead and do whatever I can to make sure I cover you. I'm not just your agent. I'm also your legal counsel, if you will.
Kevin Bacon then gets knocked out by one of the guys that I guess works with them. You saw him earlier in the film. He knocks him the fuck out. He wakes up. He's in a car. And on some Drake Kendrick shit, he's squishing the car.
Yeah, he wakes up in some car. He's throwing some insults in, and you see Maxine for I don't remember the character's name that he's playing, but Gus standing there along with his other henchmen. And Kevin's kind of like handcuffed into the car. And I think Maxine makes a remark of like, hey, you're talking big considering on where you're at. And the car gets crushed.
He tries to wiggle his way out of it. Like, he tries to save his own bacon. You know?
You were waiting to use that
I
one.
was waiting to use that one, yeah. I was waiting for that one.
Yeah.
But we didn't think everything's over, but it's really not.
That was a very bloody scene, by the way.
Yeah, it was a good kill.
I liked it a lot. The dogs was an interesting touch.
He's been playing a lot of villains recently because he was also the main villain of the new Beverly Hills Cop movie.
Kevin Bacon, yeah. That's what I heard, yeah.
Wow.
Which I like. Like, I always like actors branching out and not always encompassing the types of roles that they're given, not the family friendly, not the goofy kind. Like, no, give me evil Kevin Bacon and then give me good Gus.
Good cut. We then cut back to her where we think everything's good, but no. She sees the letter that has the address. She remembers everything clicking. The big shot producer in the hills, party in the hills, under the Hollywood sign, like all that clicks for her.
Yeah.
And then she's like, you know what? She gets ready, puts on her shit, packs up, heads out. She gets to the house. We see that the cops are tailing her. And once she gets there, she makes her way up. And she hears, as she opens the door, she's walking up the stairs. She hears, like, her dad's voice. And then
she hears a pastor going off.
Yeah, and we know it's supposed to be her dad because of what happened in X and then also earlier in the movie. But we hear her dad's voice. She's obviously fucking stunned.
Yeah, it's the same audio that they used to close out the movie X, like you said.
Opens the door, and then that's where you see the video playing of the pastor, which is the dad, and MaXXXine as a little girl. And everything plays out from there.
Oh, no, they didn't do the scene that they closed out with X. It was the video that they opened up MaXXXine with, where she's dancing on her, like, on the floor with her little tap shoes.
It's that little quote that her and her dad have.
Yeah, the whole, like, I do not accept a life that I don't deserve.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. But, either way, then we get the reveal that the dad's the big bad villain of this whole movie. It's not
He's
the
been
Night
picking
Stalker.
off all the girls one by one, but before she stumbles into the room to open the doors, she bumps onto a suitcase. Suitcase opens, limbs fall out, and lo and behold, it's the main actress from Puritan 1.
What that happened afterwards?
And the girl, she's been decapitated, but she has the scream that she claims she's become iconic for.
Yeah. And then, I forgot what happens with Maxine. She gets knocked out somehow, right?
Like, the dad walks up, she gets stunned, and then she gets knocked out, yeah.
Okay, see, that's why I thought that scene happened after she saw the dad, because I thought the scream or the scene in the suitcase is what caught her off guard to make the dad come up from behind her and knock her out with the bag. That's why I thought it happened after she saw the dad already.
We've only seen it once, so you could probably be right. I kind of remember it in a different order, but I'll go with you. Yeah, because
something catches her off guard to where she's looking this way, and then like the dad comes from behind her. Because originally she opens the doors and she's looking at her dad. But then for some reason she's behind. Maybe she's trying to run away.
I know she's backing away. Like, she almost seems to be in a state of panic, seeing her father there, like, talking the way that he is. So maybe you're right. She did bump into the suitcase, and then we see all the limbs falling out. And then that's whenever she's trying to either run downstairs or, like, trips downstairs, comes face to face with the girl. And then that's where the bag comes into play.
Either way, she's caught off guard. And then the bag is thrown over her. She gets suffocated, but not enough to kill her. Just enough to knock her out. And then she gets woken up. And this is where this movie kind of has like a whole bunch of stuff going for it. It's got like a whodunit, it's got a slasher, it's got all this type of stuff. Now they're going to add an exorcism into the mix.
One thing that I didn't catch throughout the film, and I didn't talk to you about whenever we first walked out of the theaters, was that the protesters that we were constantly seeing on set near the studio or wherever MaXXXine was leaving the set or stages, those same people within that protesting group were the same people present for the exorcism. And the one guy who was holding the sign constantly, "The devil has my daughter," was the one who was holding the video camera.
Yeah. I wonder if one of his daughters was one of those girls.
Probably not. I think he was like the henchman of the pastor or whatever. And since the pastor was constantly saying, "My daughter has been taken from the devil."
Okay, so yeah. Now I got you. But he wants to perform an exorcism. And
weird ass exorcism.
Yeah. But luckily, all this is put to a stop when the cops show up, and the cops actually like take out like most of the protesters. Man, it was a pretty
Majority of them.
insane shootout.
A lot of them have guns, like crazy ass guns. Just like any other film, the bad guys have better guns than the cops. So
yeah, I don't want to say it was wacky, but it definitely was more on the like, okay, like this is like a full blown like the ending almost came off like a Tarantino film where everyone's just getting shot and it's just blood everywhere. You know?
There was a lot of blood. There were some people who were just getting wounded and falling down. I think it was right before the father was about to brand MaXXXine because she wasn't gonna like confess to her sins or whatever. And the branding tool actually falls on the father and he catches a fire. And that's what throws everybody off guard. And that's why the cops are able to take out so many of the viewers and the worshippers because they're watching their leader literally burn.
Yeah. And ultimately, he's able to get out of that. He runs up the stairs and goes more up to the hills. And then
towards the Hollywood sign.
The Hollywood sign. The cops chase him. They both get taken out. MaXXXine follows suit. MaXXXine like kind of sees them one after the other getting taken out. I think one was shot.
One was shot, bleeding out.
One was stabbed in the eye with a cross.
Yeah, I don't think she died. I think she was just severely injured because like she makes MaXXXine stay back to try and keep the cop who's bleeding out alive. MaXXXine can clearly tell that he's probably gonna die.
Yeah. She rolls down the hill though, so I don't know. We don't know what happens to her.
We don't see her afterwards, but I think she has to be alive because the way that the police show up later with the helicopter and she still shoots her father, it's very hard for somebody to walk away from that with no survivors left. Yeah,
no, I feel you. Ultimately, yeah, that happens. She shoots her dad and everything. But what's interesting, I didn't realize this was the way it was supposed to be. I was looking up on the wiki and they mentioned that it's actually a vision that she has. The whole like when she's about to shoot her father and it cuts to her on that talk show and everything, all that's a vision. I didn't even realize that. So
I thought it was a flash forward because after she kills her father, she still ends up in the same place where people are chanting her name, MaXXXine.
Yeah, that part's real. It's the part right before she kills her dad. That whole thing is a vision, and then when it cuts back and she shoots her dad, that's where that ends, and then it's real life after that. But yeah, that whole thing was like a vision. But yeah, I guess it ended up playing out the way it did.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, she ends it off by saying, "I do not
I won't accept a life I don't deserve." The both of them say it together, just like how they did in the film. She shoots her dad, and you literally see his head, like, explode and implode. Because she uses a filed down shotgun, or like a short shotgun, one of the two, and it's in close range. So this man's head is, like, obliterated.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I've seen something that gruesome on screen before. In a long time, I should say.
Yeah.
At least in theaters. I've seen it online, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
I still feel like that. What was it? The Sickness or the Madness or whatever on Shudder. It was still one of the worst movies I've ever seen in terms of blood and gore.
I don't remember that one.
That's the virus one, I think. In either.
Oh, yeah.
Where they make you like start just fucking people and shit, and they're killing everybody and shit. How violent it got. That shit was nasty.
That was pretty gory. Yeah, this one, it was just one scene, but it was pretty cool to watch. And I think after the kill, like you said, it kind of like cuts to current day, and she's a star. We come to find out that the visions that she had is really true. Like, she is having a film of like her own story being made, but Puritan 2's coming out. Like, all the traction that has occurred of her like story is also making her famous.
Yeah, that's the difference between the vision and the real life. In the real life, Puritan hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Whereas in the vision, they were already making her like a star. Like, everyone has already seen Puritan and everything. So that's right. Okay, yeah. So they hadn't even like finished.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Puritan wasn't out yet. That makes sense. So that's the difference between the vision and the real life.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
she was mainly a star in the real life because of what happened with her dad.
Exactly.
Not because of the movie.
And I think they were just wrapping up Puritan because you see her, like, it kind of, I don't remember the details all too well, but I believe, like, it cuts to her in her trailer. Like, she's looking into the mirror and she's like, "You're a fucking star." Obviously takes her bump of coke before she walks out. And lo and behold, she meets Elizabeth, the director, on set, and you see like a prosthetic head, her head, that she struggled to finish the mold for earlier on in the film because she was having like PTSD flashbacks while feeling like she was being suffocated. Ultimately, like, MaXXXine was able to close that chapter of what happened in X to her completely. because throughout the film you see certain scenes playing out, or like her just like reliving traumatic moments with like simple triggers here and there. All in all, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was a good film. I think Rotten Tomatoes has it like at 70-something%, which I'd probably put it like at a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10.
I would put 7 or 8. I liked it. I feel like you said, you kind of walked in thinking it would be very heavily like Night Stalker based. I thought it wouldn't be so much of like how she climbed up to stardom so much. It would be more so of like, this is how she did it. She's in her stardom moment, and this is how she's trying to keep her secret throughout. But ultimately, like, I still like the way that the story played out. I like the way that Ty West kind of like wrote everything all together. So it wasn't a bad movie at all.
It was a good movie. I highly recommend you guys go check it out. But be on the lookout for other topics. I don't want to say take a break from movie stuff because we love reviewing movies.
Yes.
But we do want to just do more folklore, scary stories, just kind of stuff like that, to where we can vibe with you guys. Kind of like the episode that came out last week. So we'll probably be doing a lot of that the rest of this season. But yeah, let us know. And if you have any other topics, comment down below what you would want us to talk about or check out as well.
Please do.
There's tons of movies we haven't watched, and there's tons of things we haven't talked about yet. So.
And there's a lot of things that we can go and rewatch to get refreshers too. So
exactly, and keep an eye out on the YouTube and on TikTok. We're gonna try and put out more shorts and more TikToks. A little harder though, because Instagram Reels it's like 90 seconds. TikTok is like 2 to 10 minutes, and shorts is 60 seconds. So it's we kind of have to like gauge what platform we want to upload on, because
I like it balanced.
Yeah, not everything's going to be the exact same length.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyways, thank you for tuning in. And if you've watched MaXXXine, let us know what you thought about that movie in the comment section.